There is an art to shaping earth. To taking mud and birthing beauty, function, legacy. But what is the true source of the earth? For Nyoni, the last potter of her line, the clay from the sacred hill was a gift from the land itself. The reason her pots held water cooler, her bowls made food taste richer, her art commanded prices that kept her family alive. But a gift, dear viewer, is never free. Especially when the soil is not just soil. When every handful is a handful of ground bone and ancient spirit. And when the ancestors in the clay begin to agree with the shapes you give them. Nyoni's world was defined by a beautiful, quiet struggle. Her village, perched on the edge of the modern world, had forgotten the old ways. Concrete replaced thatch. Plastic replaced gourds. Her craft, once revered, was now a dying curiosity. Her flaw was not greed, but a desperate, proud love for her lineage. She was the last thread in a tapestry of potters stretching back to the first who learned to fire earth. To let it die with her was a failure too great to bear. Her only advantage was her clay. While others used river silt, she had the red, dense, impossibly smooth clay from the Forbidden Hill, Ilifa Labadala, the inheritance of the Old Ones. It was said the hill was the resting place of the village founders, their bodies returned to earth in the ancient way, without coffins. No one dug there. No one built there. Out of respect. Or fear. Only Nyoni's family had the right, a covenant older than memory. Take only what you need, her grandmother had whispered on her deathbed, gripping Nyoni's clay-stained hands. And always, always ask. The clay is not dirt. It is a congregation. But demand for her pieces grew. A gallery in the city offered a life-changing sum for a full collection. Orders piled up. Respectful asking became a rushed ritual, then a forgotten whisper. The need was too great. The hill was vast. One evening, as she dug deep into a new vein of particularly vibrant, rust-red clay, her trowel struck something hard. Not a rock. A smooth, curved fragment. A piece of ancient, hand-polished pottery, buried impossibly deep. And nestled against it, a small, perfect, sun-bleached knuckle bone. She recoiled, then reasoned. It was an archaeological fragment. A sign of her own ancient kin. A blessing, even. She mixed the new clay, bone dust and all, with a trembling excitement. This batch felt different. Warmer. Almost pliant before she touched it. That night, at her wheel, a miracle happened. The clay moved with her, not just under her hands. A pot formed itself, its curves perfect, its walls thin and strong as an eggshell. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever made. When fired, it came out not terracotta red, but a stunning, deep, iridescent black, shot through with fine crimson veins like capillaries. The gallery owner wept when he saw it. The order doubled. Nyoni's desperation was cured. But the covenant was broken. The first sign was the whispering. At her wheel, in the hiss of the spinning stone, she'd hear syllables. Not words. Sounds. Clicks and sighs that matched the rhythm of her hands. Then, the pots began to suggest. She'd intend a simple vase, but the clay would resist, bulging into a shape more like a rounded belly, a swollen seed pod. She'd try to make a bowl, and the rim would curl into a familiar, graceful curve she later recognized from her grandmother's profile. It was as if the memories in the clay were guiding her hands. People who bought these new pieces reported strange comforts. A woman with insomnia said she slept soundly with the pot in her room, but dreamt of old faces around a fire. A man claimed the water from his Nyoni jug healed a persistent cough. Her fame became mystical. She doesn't just make pots, they said. she pours spirit into them. But the village elder, Aseri, a man who remembered the true covenants, came to her workshop. He looked not at her, but at the bag of rich, red clay. "You dig deep now, Nyoni," he said, his voice dry as old leaves. "The deep clay is the best," she replied, defensive. "The deep clay is the ancestor," Aseri corrected, his eyes sharp. "You are not just taking earth. You are grinding the bones of your grandmother's grandmother. You are mixing their dust with water and spinning their essence on a wheel. What do you think happens to the spirit when you do that?" She scoffed. "My art honors them. Their legacy lives in my work." "A spirit does not wish to live as a teacup, Nyoni," he said, turning to leave. "It wishes to rest. You are not giving them life. You are giving them task. And a task without end is a curse. You will see." She dismissed him. But his words festered. The next commission was her largest, a ceremonial urn for a chief in another province. She needed a vast amount of clay. She went to the hill and dug deeper than ever before, unearthing not fragments, but a full, delicate skeleton of a hand, the clay packed between its fingers. Horrified but mesmerized, she did the unthinkable. She carefully pulverized the brittle bones into a fine powder and kneaded them into the clay. This, she thought with a mad mix of guilt and awe, would be her masterpiece. The ultimate unity of artist and ancestor. The urn was magnificent. Dark, towering, intricate. As she finished the final design, a pattern of migrating birds, the whispering at the wheel became a clear, tired voice in her ear. "Daughter." She jumped, ruining a section. The voice was her grandmother's. That night, the kiln fire burned not orange, but a ghostly, cold blue. And when she opened it at dawn, the urn was flawless. And warm to the touch. Not cooling. She delivered it. The chief was awed. But that evening, as she sat alone in her workshop, she felt a presence. She turned. On her shelf, every pot she had made from the deep clay was weeping. Slow, clear beads of water seeped from the pores of the glazed ceramic and dripped to the floor. The air filled with a salt and earth smell, like the inside of a tomb. And the whispering voice now spoke from all around her, no longer tired, but angry, unified. Nyoni's world shrank to the four walls of her workshop, now a catacomb of weeping pottery. She couldn't sleep. The whispers were constant, a council of the dead debating her fate. Her own hands began to feel strange, stiff, dry, cracking. She looked in the mirror and saw not her face, but a suggestion of many faces shifting beneath her skin, like reflections in disturbed water. The final straw was the news from the chief. The great urn, placed in his hall, had begun to hum. A low, resonant drone that filled the compound. Then, it started to reproduce. Overnight, small, wet, clay nodules would appear around its base, growing like fungus, shaping themselves into tiny, perfect replicas of Nyoni's earlier works. The ancestor in the urn was not resting. It was creating. Using her designs, her style, but with a mind of its own. Nyoni knew then. Aseri was right. She had not given them legacy. She had given them an eternal, relentless job. And they were tired. They wanted the artist's hands. They wanted to rest inside the living potter. She ran to the hill, Ilifa Labadala, not with a trowel, but with her bare, clay-stiffened hands. She fell to her knees at the digging site. "I am sorry," she screamed into the earth. "I was wrong. Forgive me. How do I fix it?" The wind through the grass sounded like a sigh. The earth before her softened. A single, pure white shard of bone, a rib, pushed itself to the surface. The message was clear. There was only one vessel grand enough, sacred enough, to hold all the disturbed spirits she had mined and mixed and spun. A final pot. Not to be sold. Nyoni worked for 3 days and nights. She took the last of the deep clay, the most potent, mixed with water from the village's first spring. She did not shape it. She knelt before the wheel and let her trembling hands hover. The clay rose and moved of its own accord, spiraling upwards, forming a vast, elegant, sealed vessel, a sarcophagus of clay. As the final curve closed, her hands fell, numb. The pot was complete. It sat there, silent. Not weeping. The whispers in her workshop stopped. The pots on her shelf dried. Nyoni walked back to the village, her hands permanently curled, stiff, and cold, like dry clay. She could never pot again. The gallery contract was void. But the humming from the chief's urn ceased. The replicas crumbled to dust. She had contained the spirits. By becoming the vessel for their will, she had let them craft their own rest. Now, she sits by the road to the hill, a living monument. Children sometimes bring her simple river clay, asking for a lesson. She just smiles, her eyes old, and holds up her stiff, shaped hands. The earth remembers, she tells them. Be careful what you ask it to forget. Nyoni's art died so her ancestors could finally sleep. But the hill, Ilifa Labadala, still holds its red clay. And in the city, her few, early pieces now sell for fortunes, bought by collectors who feel a strange peace in their presence. They are cherished, quiet tombs. The moral is fired in the kiln of regret. To take from the past without sacred consent is not creation, it is a theft of peace. You might shape a masterpiece, but you are also shaping a prison, and one day, you may be asked to live inside it. But what do you think? Was Nyoni's final act true atonement, or was she simply forced to become the ultimate pot in her own collection? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe to Safari of Tales and hit the bell icon. Remember, some materials are not just to be used. They are to be spoken to. Until next time, tread lightly on the old earth.